Game week 14 is here and we have got another injury and suspension crisis and we need to fix it. Thankfully, after a particularly successful free hit, I'm feeling more confident than ever as we lock in my team for FPL Game week 14. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan, we are back once again and yeah, how better to start than this? An incredible game week 13 for me on the free hit. 80 points, a significant green arrow from 800k all the way up to 177k with a game week rank of 11,000th in the world. So kind of top 0.01% rank in the individual game week 13, which is absolutely insane. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people who got very high scores this week. Congratulations to everyone. And those of you who maybe didn't get such a high score, what I want you to do is use this as evidence that one game week can change your season. Maybe it happened to me in game week 13. The luck was on my side. And believe me, there was a fair amount of luck there for me. On another week, that could be you. And, you know, the season is never over. I thought my season was kind of plodding along pretty boringly, but a sudden change and everything is suddenly different. That can happen to anyone on any given game week, including you guys. So yes, indeed, guys, going for the, well, I guess double Aston Villa defense with the third Aston Villa defender auto subbing on for Salah. A big piece of luck there for me. I did decide to back against Rodgers in the end as I wasn't really feeling too keen on him and went for Mateta instead, who scored the penalty, thankfully, to grant me 6 points. As well as that, we saw huge hauls from Foden, Gakpo and Thiago. I think a lot of people expected to see that on a free hit, but we backed against a lot of the other opinions, maybe people who weren't so keen on Foden and Gakpo, for example. We just went for them. We looked at the data, we looked at the matchups, we looked at the tactics, and we went for it, and it went better than we expected. Don't get me wrong, but it was a success. So really, really happy. A lot of things went my way. A lot of luck went my way. It's a huge rank increase, and I think we really can push on from here and get an incredible rank this season. I really do believe that at this point. So let's push on, guys, and see what we can do in game week 14, because there are some issues to resolve, but I think I have the solutions. And guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like. Really appreciate it. It is currently 2 a.m. as I'm recording this video. So yeah, it's really appreciated all of the love right now, and feel free to subscribe if you want to follow along with my FPL moves each and every game week. So with game week 14 ahead, we have got 2 free transfers, 0.7 million in the bank, and I want to set up my team and then go through what the options are for a team that is maybe suffering with the same kind of issues as my team does. So let's start off in goal. We have got Raya against Brentford. We do know that Arsenal are going to be a great team to keep clean sheets in any given game week, and we can throw up some of the clean sheet odds on screen right now. This is coming in from Rob T on Twitter. Arsenal way out in front with a 49% chance of a clean sheet this week, which is very, very significant indeed. Liverpool in second, 41%, with Crystal Palace not too far behind either, with a 39% chance of a clean sheet, followed by some of the other teams, Man United, Chelsea, City, Newcastle, Forest, Bournemouth and Brighton, all with 30% or more, suggests that they are all very valuable teams when looking for clean sheets. I'm always looking for 30% clean sheet chance or more if I want to feel confident in my defenders, and thankfully the defenders I do fit that bill. So let's go through some of these now. We've got Virgil, Chow and Richards as my current starting defenders, and we may tinker with this a little bit as we come to transfers, but let's go through these players regardless. So first of all, Virgil van Dijk. I know there was a lot of criticism about the pick a couple of weeks ago, but with defensive contributions in game week 12 and a clean sheet in game week 13, actually a fairly convincing clean sheet in game week 13, actually Virgil has turned out to be not so bad over the last couple of weeks. And if Liverpool can continue their form, you know, that has obviously begun to improve against West Ham, then hopefully we're going to be able to see some more clean sheets here up in the upcoming game weeks. What's most important with someone like Virgil is that he is so nailed on for minutes, and that's going to be crucial with a midweek game week, and of course the weekend games just a few days after that for Liverpool, who play on Thursday. So Virgil, very happy with this pick indeed. Malik Chow, another player who is seemingly nailed on for minutes right now. We obviously had him a little while ago. Hasn't really brought me too many fruits, I guess, in recent game weeks. But yeah, until game week 13, I free hitted him out. Now, I can't say honestly if I would have started him or not. But even if I did start Chow last game week, his huge score wouldn't have been enough to kind of, you know, beat the free hit score that I had, which was genuinely incredible. So yeah, obviously it's sad to free hit a player who scores very well, but I can't exactly complain because I brought in loads of other players who scored just as well. So Malik Chow, I think, is going to become much more fashionable now. Maybe I went a little bit early on him, but now we've got to a point where I'm pretty happy that I'm ahead of the game a little bit on this pick. So nice to have him in my team. I don't know if I love the Spurs fixture, but at home for Newcastle, it's certainly a good one. It's really the following game weeks I'm mostly looking forward to when it comes to Malik Chow, who, by the way, is also pretty good for defensive contributions, as we'll have a look at in a moment. Richards is my third and final defender in the starting 11. He faces Burnley with some very nice clean sheet odds there, 39%. Not bad at all. I think between Arsenal, Liverpool and Crystal Palace, this is going to form, some of the best clean sheet odds you can get in this game week. So really nice opportunity. Now, the one concern with Richard is he maybe going to be just a little bit of a rotation risk? We have seen in other competitions during the midweek fixtures, occasionally Richards will drop out of the starting 11. He is rested, he is rotated. And I think with JD Canvo, who has really proven himself as a brilliant young defender, we could actually see Canvo come in and play instead of Richards. And I think any Richards owner should be a little bit aware of that and the potential for that to happen, because I don't think it's clear cut that Richards starts. If you do have someone like Richards, I think it is still worth playing him, worth starting him this week and hoping for the best. And if he doesn't play, well, hopefully he doesn't get any minutes from the bench and you're going to have a backup player on your bench. Hopefully, anyway. That's, I think, the goal. And looking at my bench, I'm not sure I exactly have that. Of course, we have Dubravka, who I'm not going to start instead of Raya. Obi is a permanent bench player for me, but Senesi and Alderete are not going to offer me any joy. With Senesi suspended for game week 14, even though it would have been a fixture I would have liked to play him in, maybe at home against Everton. After that, fixture's pretty rough in the following game weeks. And Alderete away against Liverpool, that's not exactly great bench cover for this week either if Richards is unavailable. So we're in a pretty bad spot here in terms of that bench coverage if Richards were to not play. So right now, before transfers, I really am depending on Richards playing. So that is definitely a cause for concern. Now, just going through these defenders in a little bit further detail, as you can see, the three starting defenders I have, as well as Alderete on my bench, are all very good for defensive contributions. What you see on screen here is a list of players per start this season. How many defensive contributions have they made? Richards and Virgil kind of in 5th and 6th place here, over the 10 threshold on average. Alderete 9.5, and Malik Chow is pretty good for this as well, with 9 defcons per start as well. So these are really strong defenders. I want to make sure I do have a lot of these defenders who are going to be reliable, picking up those regular points. If they can get clean sheets, great. If they can get extra points for defensive contributions, great. Bonus points, great. These are all great things. Although I have to say, I didn't expect too much in terms of attacking returns for any of these three defenders in particular, though Malik Chow may be proving that one wrong in game week 13, and hopefully he can continue to score the odd goal. That would be pretty nice, wouldn't it? So that is what my defense is currently looking like. We need to move on into midfield, and we have Saka, Bruno, Semenyo, Enzo, and Sarr right now. Saka, I think, is absolutely fine. Maybe not the best value for money right now, but at home against Brentford, we don't mind this fixture too much, I would say. And I think, I think most people would be happy to have him for this game. Bruno, at home against West Ham, is brilliant. We're going to talk about him and Saka in more detail when we come to the captaincy chat in this video. But Bruno has been so consistent. Another 2 assists in game week 13 was amazing, both from set pieces. And we just see time and time again, Bruno is just always capable of finding returns from somewhere, whether that's set pieces, open play, whether it is taking a penalty, whether it's getting defensive contributions. And if he's getting bonus points for doing very, very little, he does seem to be that player who only needs to get one attacking return and it will get all of the bonus points, because he is so crucial to the way that Manchester United are playing. And I think, with Bruno, the opinion on him, the public opinion at least, seems to change every game week. One week, everyone's saying terrible, he's just a defensive midfielder. The next week, oh yeah, actually, he looks quite good. I'm pretty consistent in thinking that Bruno is very good. I'm not totally convinced he's value for money, but with no Palmer available recently, Salah not performing, like, you have to spend your money somewhere. And if, you have all this money to spend on, on players, rather than looking for players who are good value for money, how about just looking for players who you think will score points if you have the spare budget anyway? And I think Bruno fits into that category, as well as maybe Saka. Semenyo has been disappointing recently, but I think a little unlucky last game week. He did have a goal disallowed, and he did create a chance for Evanilson, which was pretty much an open goal. Really should have been finished. Evanilson hitting the woodwork there. So I think Semenyo, unfortunate last game week. Enzo against Arsenal, we didn't expect too much the last game week, but the week before came away with a goal. A nice big score for him. And against Leeds, I think, again, we're hoping for some good stuff from Enzo. And Sarr is a problem. We're expecting him to be out for the next couple of game weeks with his ankle injury. We've seen him on crutches. So it is not looking too good for Sarr. That's maybe an understatement. And then even after the next couple of game weeks, we've got Man City in game week 16. And in game week 17, we're expecting him to go off and play in AFCON for Senegal. So that's going to be a real big problem for Sarr. Out for the next 2 game weeks, potentially. Maybe he's back for Man City, but is that a game you'd want him anyway? And then after that, AFCON. He's a player who has to go, and we will be replacing him in today's video. Going up front, we've got Erling Haaland and Mateta. Haaland, a very obvious player to have indeed. Mateta is of some concern, and if it weren't for the injury to Sarr, I would be even more concerned about Mateta's minutes. It's very clear that he is not necessarily a 90-minute man every game week, well, at least every game, if we're including the midweek games. This is a midweek game, and I'm worried about Mateta maybe getting some rest, maybe getting some rotation in this game. I don't think we're going to see 90 minutes against Burnley. I think, best case scenario, he starts and plays 70 minutes. I think even that isn't particularly likely. I think, we're probably looking at least a 30 to 40% chance of him being benched and, someone else coming in his place, probably Nketiah playing as striker for Crystal Palace this week. But if you have Mateta, I think you just have to start him because you cannot bench a striker against Burnley. It is just a terrible idea, and it could be so damaging. Because, there are no better fixtures than Burnley this Premier League season. Some people might argue Wolves, but I think right now it is Burnley. That is the money fixture. And, even Mateta for 30 minutes off the bench, I think I would still quite like that. Even Mateta for 59 minutes and a 1-pointer, well, will it be a 1-pointer when he's playing against Burnley? Will he get enough opportunities in that game to really get a goal and get enough points to really justify having him? And I think that will be the case. So I think Mateta is a player you have to play, you have to keep, but also have to be worried about all at the same time. A bit of a mind messer, I suppose, that one. Looking at the data from my players in the attacking positions, and what we see is Haaland, Mateta, Enzo, and Saka are all players who are in the top 20 for expected goal involvements per start over the past 6 game weeks, which is brilliant. But we've seen Sarr drop out, we've seen Semenyo drop out. We did mention it a couple of weeks ago that the players like Sarr and Semenyo were kind of decreasing, really, moving down the table in terms of expected goal involvements, and maybe was suggesting that these are players that aren't as involved as we would have perhaps liked them to be. And as such, these are definitely players I need to consider moving on. I want at least the majority of my attackers to be these players who are high output, expected goal involvement, high volume of shots, high volume of key passes. I want them to be heavily involved in the attacks, and I'm not sure they are right now. And, maybe you throw Bruno in there as well, who is not making the top 20 right now for these underlying numbers. He's not far out, to be fair, and does get DEFCON, but it's still something to be aware of at this present moment. So let's continue on, guys, because I think at this point we need to talk about transfers. And I tweeted this out, earlier today. Was it yesterday? I don't know. Whenever I posted this, I think it was earlier today for me. It'll be yesterday for you guys by the time you watch this. And I was talking about Senesi and Sarr because I need to make sure I have bench cover and I need to replace Sarr. So both Senesi and Sarr are going to have to leave my team. I think, Sarr could be out of action for the next month if he's going to AFCON immediately after an injury. And Senesi, after this game week, there's only really one game week 17 against Burnley that I would really be interested in playing him. Every other game week, I'm just not interested in starting him either side of that game week. And is it really worth keeping him for that? For one game week only? Probably not, when I need to get some squad depth in a period of time where there genuinely could be rotation and we genuinely could rely on our bench more than ever. I need to solve that situation. So I was debating 3 different combinations, and I think all 3 of these combos of replacements are good. These are my 3 favorite combos, and it's basically going to be down to budget, really. And you know, you're either going to pick a cheap defender, an expensive attacker, or vice versa, or something in between for both. And I think there's 3 ways of looking at these combos. The first combo is the template combo, in my opinion, O'Reilly and Rice. Lots of people in the overall player base have Rice in their team, and if you are scared of Rice picking up some big returns, and you know, Rice can do that, then Rice is a good player to go for. I think O'Reilly is going to be a really popular move this week as well. So maybe the boring move would be to go very simple, Rice and O'Reilly. I think that is the most simple move. But you know me, guys, I never like to play things simple. So I'm mostly looking at the other 2 options. The first of which is the analytics option. And analytics, when we're looking at an analytical way of playing FPL, looking at those models and those solvers to try and fix our FPL teams using computers, well, they often do suggest players who are good for minutes. And Anderson in particular is a 90-minute midfielder at Nottingham Forest. He plays 90 minutes every single game. He gets DEFCON nearly every single game. He's great. Timber, also a player who has been really good for minutes and is brilliant. But my gut feeling is to go for Anderson and Gakpo. Now, granted, if I went for Anderson, the Fulham defender, he would be facing Man City this week, which is not a good fixture. And would that be adequate bench cover? I'm not sure. But you've seen my 3 defenders for this week already, guys. Virgil, Chow, and Richard. I don't really need a new starting defender necessarily. And I think, you know, maybe O'Reilly, Timber, they would be starting defenders. I'd have to throw them straight into the starting 11, where Anderson would have to go straight to the bench. That would allow me to get Gakpo, who I really like as a pick and is really very much data backed. But the big concern is around minutes, particularly with the midweek fixture. And if you think Salah is going to come back into the Liverpool starting 11, I'm not sure if Gakpo and Salah are going to be starting together anytime soon. So it might be actually that Gakpo is worth waiting for until AFCON when Salah goes off, and that's the time to buy Gakpo. Let's look at some of these midfielders first of all, guys. And we're back on the expected goal involvements per start over the past 6 game weeks. And as you can see, Gakpo comes in 4th. Even though I think a lot of his off-the-ball play has maybe not been great. He's maybe been wasteful at times. What we see with him at Liverpool is that everything good goes through him. He creates the most chances, he takes the most shots, and as we saw last game week, he got the goal and an assist. That's why I picked him. And if I was certain about his minutes, I don't care how well he's playing, I just want a player who is heavily involved in goals and assists for my FPL team, because that's how you get points. So Gakpo definitely fits that bill, but is he going to be starting every game? Because even though he has been scoring and assisting, I don't think he is crucial to the way Liverpool are playing. And if you are going to see like a midweek game like this game week, it may be an opportunity to rest him with him playing so many minutes recently. So I'm kind of a little bit cautious on this one. I love Gakpo as a pick. And if someone told me right now Gakpo is going to be starting in game week 14, I would say, okay, great, thank you. I will buy him immediately. There would be no question about it. But we have to put our sensible hats on a little bit here when it comes to these midweek fixtures and consider minutes. Now, Rice seems to be reasonably good for minutes. I don't think he is quite as good as maybe Anderson, for example, but I think there's a very high chance that Rice starts in game week 14. And he's actually looking pretty good for those underlying numbers. 0.4 expected goal involvements per start. That's just below Saka on 0.5. He has drastically improved and is also good for defensive contributions as well. So even at 7 million, I still think he's very good value for money. Anderson is not going to be on this list for expected goal involvements, but having a quick look at him, what we have seen that he is a defensive contribution monster. He has hit DEFCON in 8 out of his last 10 games, and even the ones he misses, it's close, like 11 or 10. So, you know, he's always so close. He got bonus points last game week despite not getting any attacking returns. And before that, he got a goal. He got an assist the week before that as well. There's a genuinely, I think, a little bit of love to be had for our good friend Anderson at the moment with recent performances and the price he is 5.3 million and what he enables you to do with your money if you do go for him, allowing you to go for a more expensive player in maybe a different position. Looking through the defenders, we've got O'Reilly and Timber score really, really high for the attacking contribution. So O'Reilly, 2.6 expected goal involvements in 6 game weeks, though he does have some rotation risk. Gavardio can play at left back. Nori can play at left back before AFCON. So again, is O'Reilly of the kind of player who is maybe worth waiting for, to get past these midweek Premier League games and, get towards AFCON where there's less player availability, where O'Reilly might be more nailed on. I think it's similar to Gakpo in that kind of sense. Timber, I think every time I've watched Arsenal play, in FPL terms, Timber to me has looked like Arsenal's best FPL asset because you're always going to have a good chance of clean sheets, and he is just so attacking. And it's not just how many shots he's taking, how much he is creating, but his positioning. And I think with Saka, very happy to overlap on the right-hand side. It often allows Timber to come inside and make those drives into the box, which for a defender is absolutely fantastic, particularly one who is getting clean sheets. O'Reilly and Timber, terrible for DEFCON, by the way. The rest of my defense is brilliant for DEFCON, so I'm not too worried about that. But one other note, I suppose, is, of course, that Anderson, the other option for defense, is fantastic for defensive contributions. He's kind of ranking 3rd at the moment among players, among defenders in the Premier League for that stat. So the big question is, guys, who am I going to go for? What combo is it going to be for me this week? And I think the way I've made this decision is pretty simple. And I think definitely in recent seasons, a big problem of mine has been to not take my own advice, essentially, to always kind of just take these risky punts and not take a lot of my own advice, which is just to go safe this game week. This midweek fixture, minutes are king. And as such, I feel like a way to kind of correct some past mistakes and not fall into the same traps as I have done in the last couple of seasons is to take my own advice and, prioritize those minutes, because I think that is the best thing to do at this game week. And we can always go for some risky players a little bit later down the line when things open up a little bit. There's less midweek games. And as such, I am going to be going for this combo, guys. Yes, we are going to be going for the analytical approach of Anderson and Timber in for Sarr and Senesi. And I think this combo looks good and it gives me a lot of security. I think out of all of the 3 combos, this combo is the most safe for minutes. Some people will be a little worried about Ben White, but we've seen absolutely no evidence so far of Ben White being a threat to Timber's minutes. I'm sure it will happen at one point or another, but Timber seems to be nailed on 90% at this point, and we will see him rotated, but it will happen pretty infrequently. And as such, I'm pretty confident about his minutes. You can't be 100% about anyone right now other than maybe Anderson, which is why I think he's such a great pick as well. And this also opens up some other pathways where I can get those risky players. If I still want to get Gakpo, if I still want to get someone like Foden as well, these are 2 players I would love to have in my team. I actually still have a route to these players in Game Week 15, which I do want to talk about a little later on in the video. But first of all, we need to talk about captaincy, guys. And for me, it's between 3 players. It's going to be Haaland, Bruno, and Saka. I think those are the 3 obvious captains for this week, particularly given that we can't be secure on Mateta's minutes. So as such, how are we going to do this? Well, let's look at the defenses that these teams are facing. So Saka is facing Brentford, who over the past 10 game weeks have put up the 3rd best non-penalty expected goals against. Okay, that's a little bit of a concern. How about Haaland against Fulham? That's not too much better. 10.7 non-penalty expected goals against. For the likes of Bruno, well, West Ham are the 2nd worst defence over the past 10 game weeks for that underlying data, with 16.4 non-penalty expected goals against, even more if you include penalties as well that they have conceded this season, and they have conceded a couple. So if we're looking for the best fixture, it is Bruno, but surely Haaland is good enough to do it against Fulham. Like Saka, granted, his underlying numbers, his attacking output is not great right now. So maybe that Brentford fixture worries us a little bit, despite it being at home. But Haaland's been brilliant for the majority of this season. And, Fulham is a slightly tough defense, but it's mid-table. There's nothing too much to worry about this one. Until you see this, guys. And I'm going to show you some graphics. These are coming in from FPL Meerkat on Twitter again. And I really do recommend you go check out FPL Meerkat, by the way, guys. I've known him for a few years now. Really nice guy, and his effort for his Twitter graphics is really top notch, and it helps me out so much every week. So recommend you going to check him out, giving him some love, showing him some love maybe. But this is something that really stood out to me when we looked at his his graphics for goals conceded through game week 1 to 13. And this is Fulham's graphic, and we're looking at all of the goals in which Fulham have conceded so far this season. And what do you notice, guys? Well, you might notice that there is just one dot for strikers. Yes, only one striker has scored against Fulham this entire season, which is highly, highly irregular. We see Fulham really so far this season, who is actually a team that is not conceding to strikers. Maybe the strength of their centre-backs is kind of maybe pushing a lot of the chances slightly further wider, and maybe the wider men really getting the joy against Fulham. So maybe you're looking at, I don't know, depends who's going to play on the wing. Is it going to be Foden? Is it going to be Marmoush, Cherki, someone like that? We don't know with Man City. But if we're looking at the trend so far this season, this doesn't suggest Haaland. This is incredibly abnormal to see a graphic that has just one goal scored by a striker. This is highly unusual. On the flip side of this, guys, let's look at this graphic from West Ham and the goals they've conceded. Now, yes, they've conceded a lot of goals from strikers. That is pretty normal. But what is abnormal about this graphic is the amount of goals conceded to central midfielders. A highly irregular, a highly abnormal amount of goals conceded to central midfielders, of which Bruno Fernandes is. And what we see from West Ham is they concede a lot of chances where the ball is kind of cut inside and, you know, the central midfielder kind of makes a late run into the box and scores a goal. Or they're conceding from a set piece, for example, as well. Who is a box crashing central midfielder? Bruno. Who is a set piece taker? Bruno. Who is kind of the player who often plays the pass to a box crasher? Also Bruno. There is so much to suggest that this matchup favours Bruno more than Haaland's matchup favours him, to suggest to me that the best captain for this game week is going to be Bruno Fernandes. I think there's enough evidence here. So I think we go with the evidence that we see in front of us. We're going to captain Bruno Fernandes, and we're going to put the vice captain on Erling Haaland. And I think we can be a little bit confident in that one because it works. It works for what we see. It works for the data. It works for, you know, what we've seen so far, the tactical matchups. I love this, guys. I love making these discoveries where you're like, eureka moment. It's all lined up to captain Bruno versus Haaland this week. Unless you fancy Saka, of course, but it really does look like Bruno's the one. I don't know how many of you guys will feel brave enough to join me on that one. I think most people will captain Haaland, and there is going to be a significant risk going against Haaland. But since I went fairly boring with my transfers already, I think Bruno Fernandes makes a lot of sense as a captain this week to maybe find a way of, you know, doing the risky business in a slightly different way. Of course, you never know. A game week like game week 13, Saka and Haaland are always going to have that 10% risk of rotation. But Bruno, no doubt, no chance he is going to play. And that security gives me a lot of faith in him as well. So Bruno's going to be the captain. But we did mention that there is still a way for me to get to either a Gakpo or maybe a Foden in game week 15. And I want to show you exactly how I'm going to be able to do that. So I'm on the Fantasy Football Hub My Team tool, which is a great planning tool if you want to look at your future game weeks, kind of plan out those transfers, those routes you can take. Of course, you have the predicted points here as well, which can help you and aid you into decision making as well. With the two transfers, guys, the two free transfers of Anderson and Timber in, we are now looking at a 100% team rating, which means this is a data-backed team. This is a analytical-based team. Obviously, we knew that with the moves that we were making, but it certainly can give you a lot of confidence when you see a nice 100% team rating on screen for you guys. Of course, 100% team rating isn't essential, but you're looking for 90% plus. Of course, if you want to check out this tool, you can use the link at the top of the description to see how your team rates. But I do want to go through this, guys. So game week 14, use the two free transfers. Game week 15, you need to use up any transfers you have remaining. I say need, you want to, really, because in game week 16, you are going to be topped up to 5 free transfers. No matter how many free transfers you roll into game week 16, you will always be topped up to 5 transfers because of AFCON. That is just the rule that FPL have put in this year. For some reason, don't ask me why. I am someone who has pretty much planned to not have AFCON players. Sarr was my only AFCON player. Everyone else is not going to that tournament and is going to be available. Semenyo and Ghana didn't qualify, for example, but we did mention earlier that Semenyo and his underlying numbers were dropping a little bit. And in game week 15, yes, he has Everton at home in game week 14, pretty nice. But in game week 15, we have Chelsea, Man United away, which I don't think is the same as Man United at home. And this worries me a little bit because, you know, even after that, we've got Brentford away after Burnley. We've got Chelsea away after that. We've got Arsenal in game week 20. I think game week 15 is a genuine opportunity to sell Semenyo, and with 0.4 in the bank, which I will have, guys, because I made the Anderson move early to avoid price changes, I can move straight from Semenyo to someone like Foden or Gakpo. And I don't know who I'm going to go for. And I think game week 14 is going to be very much a, I guess, a scouting mission for me. Really trying to get an idea on minutes in particular and what we think the minutes are going to be like in game week 15. So, for example, if Gakpo plays 30 minutes and plays well in those 30 minutes in game week 14, I think he'll start in game week 15 and therefore I can buy him. Same kind of situation with Foden. So we can get an idea on these players' minutes and what they look like for game week 15, and whichever one we like the most, we could just slap them in the team straight away. We'll have the money to do so. And that's how we can go from, you know, maybe some boring picks like Timber and Anderson in game week 14, just to consolidate, just to make sure we are secure in a risky game week, to move forward into game week 15 with more information and start to take a few more risks. And from game week 16, I think we can kind of make this type of transfer every single game week, because you're going to have 5 free transfers in game week 16. You might not have very much to do with them. So as such, you can just use those free transfers to move out players who maybe don't have the ideal fixture for players who maybe have better fixtures. So let's look at some forwards, for example. Mateta playing against Man City. Okay, don't like the look of that. Just 1 free transfer. Thiago in, make that transfer, move on to the next week. Okay, we're at 5 free transfers again. We have to use 1. What we're going to do it? Okay, we can do something maybe a little bit luxury here. Maybe at that point you say, okay, we can move Enzo out. And at this point, maybe I fancy Gakpo, who faces Spurs and Wolves and Leeds in the following 3 fixtures. Brilliant. Let's do that as long as his minutes look good right there. And we could just continue on like that to make these kind of what you might call luxury transfers to try and target whichever teams have, well, take out who has a bad fixture and bring in whoever has a good fixture. And like, you know, for example, if like after a few game weeks, we don't like Gakpo anymore, or we don't like Foden anymore, or we don't like Thiago anymore, no problem. We'll just keep moving players around. You know, we can go, you know, Thiago to Voltemada at that point if you want, because Voltemada plays Burnley in game week 19, and etc, etc. You can just keep on moving like that, because you're always going to have all of these free transfers that you pretty much have to use. Now, of course, things won't always work out like that. There will be injuries, there will be suspensions, there will be various other changes that may eat into your other transfers a little bit, but you're going to have so much spare transfers kind of to use, particularly if you don't have many AFCON players. And at that point, you can take risks. You can, you know, go for players you wouldn't ordinarily go for. You can play a little bit more luxuriously to target those fixtures. And I think that's very much what I plan to do. I think for game week 14, it's about making sure my team is secure and deep. Game week 15 really onwards, we go crazy. We just bring in whoever we like the most each game week and try and, you know, spike those big hauls each week with some really hard-hitting players. And I think that's going to be my strategy going into this Christmas period with these free transfers. And hopefully we can continue to build up the ranks, because the next target is top 100k. And I think I can do it within the next 2 game weeks. That is the plan. But anyway, guys, that is going to be it from me today. If you did want to check out this tool from Fantasy Football Hub, remember to check out the link in the description to check it out. Drop a like, of course. Please do subscribe as well. If you want to check out my buy, sell, keep, avoid, or 100 experts videos, you can check them out for game week 14 right here. And I will see you later on today for a deadline stream. Hope to see you there, guys. Thanks for watching, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.